And now I sit in a parliament which is, my benches, the SNP benches, are so gay, so LGBT, that we've now made Westminster the gayest parliament in the whole world.
Meet John Nicolson, SNP MP. Let's see what he's had to say recently. The SNP has been riven by sex scandals, sexually inappropriate behaviour, marital unfaithfulness on a massive, and I have to say, disproportionate scale, say for many, many years. Then along comes Kate Forbes, who admits to a higher standard of sexual morality, sex within marriage only. Now, if all the SNP representatives had followed that principle, that would have avoided all of the scandals that have beset the party for many years. So let's see how John Nicolson responds to that.
The thing I don't get about these religious fundamentalists is, why are they all so obsessed with sex?
Well, you'll have to ask them.
You know, the Bible tells us that we can't wear mixed fabrics or eat shellfish as well. They don't worry about that.
But you say you think you'll be able to stay. What's keeping you from saying 100%?
So he's quite happy to call Kate Forbes a sex-obsessed religious fundamentalist. Now note the way Kate Forbes has responded to people that she knows in the SNP really disagree with her values, her traditional moral values. She's so ironical, she's so gracious, trying to reach out to them, trying to find common ground, sometimes I think going too far, to the point of stretching integrity beyond breaking point. But Kate Forbes really done everything she can to try and keep them on side. Whereas John Nicolson, you're a sex-obsessed religious fundamentalist. And he brings up the shellfish point there. It's a bit depressing, isn't it? He's supposed to be an MP. You would hope an MP would be quite intelligent, would enter into debate on the basis of some sort of knowledge and understanding, but not at all with John. I mean, the shellfish line, for those of you who are not aware, in the Old Testament, there are rules about not eating various foodstuffs, but they are explicitly superseded and set aside in the New Testament. So anyone who's got the vaguest understanding of Christian teaching would know that. But here you've got an MP who's happy to appear on national television, basically displaying his ignorance of the matter. He should be embarrassed. Of course he won't be. He'll never be put on the spot. He'll never be challenged about that. But he should be absolutely embarrassed at displaying his ignorance in that manner. So John Nicolson will strike again here, this time talking about the sex education debate that's going on in England. The Conservative MP Miriam Cates has been bringing up the issue. Now, there's always a smattering of MPs in the Conservative Party who are actually socially conservative. They're generally ignored and they don't influence policy, but there's always a handful of them there in the Conservative Party. I mean, really, Miriam Cates, if she was in Scotland, should be in the Scottish Family Party. So the basic line that she's been bringing up is she's been objecting to some sex education resources being provided by external organisations, Stonewall, etc. She's come up with lots of sort of horror stories, really quite shocking material that's been used in schools. Rishi Sunak has ordered a review in the area. Now, ordering a review, that sounds promising, doesn't it? But we've obviously got to ask the question, review according to what standards? Because there are lots of people who would look at this material and say, no, I think that's perfectly appropriate. Whereas we might well say, well, actually, it's not. So the fact that the review is happening, well, let's wait and see what standards are used in that review. But anyway, here is John Nicholson's response.
I think the key to all this, Joe, is what Lee Anderson, the Vice Chair of the Conservative Party, said. He said the next election will be fought and won on culture issues and trans rights. And that's what all this is about. That MP is an evangelical Christian. I read her report. She can't justify any of the things that she said just now in the House of Commons. Over 51 pages, she was unable to produce proof of the claims that she made. And we know what this is about. It's attacking trans people and trying to heat up a right-wing culture war imported from the States.
So again, he sort of displays his sort of bigotry there. So Miriam Cates is an evangelical Christian, he has to say. In other words, that discredits her before you even need to say anything else, doesn't it, in his view? And then he says she's got no evidence for her claims. Now, I haven't looked into this in detail because it doesn't apply in Scotland. But that sounds familiar to us because when we present evidence, when we show people these are the lesson plans recommended by the Scottish Government, this is what's been used in your council area, a lot of people look at them and they say, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And then John Nicolson is just taking the same approach in England, just burying his head in the sands, pretending the things are not really happening. Now, in England and Wales, the focus is on, rogue organisations producing this unsuitable material, or the occasional rogue teacher who's taking the wrong approach to it. Whereas in Scotland, the issue is very different. It's not, rogue teachers, rogue organisations. The issue is the government. The government's and council's official sex education resources that are there for all to see on the rshp.scot website. Now, John Nicolson is not challenged about those, and that's a media issue. The Scottish media, for some reason, which I don't quite understand, is completely hopeless on this issue. They will not touch sex education in Scotland. For example, the issue in England has been the Daily Telegraph has been at the forefront of raising this issue, and they put out a general call. Please send us examples of unsuitable material that's been used in schools. So I sent them my book on the government's sex education resources in Scotland, a whole book of content. Completely ignore it. Not interested at all. That's always been the case with the media. They will not touch sex education in Scotland. When we had our opinion poll done, that showed the public very much against aspects of the sex education. Didn't get a single column inch in any publication in Scotland. So we've got John Nicolson there talking about sex education in England. Meanwhile, down the road from his constituency office, which I understand is in Alloa, down the road in Denny, not too far away, parents are protesting about the sex education in the primary school there. But John Nicolson is allowed to ignore that and to be on television talking about what's going on in England. Whose fault that is that? Well, it's the media's fault for refusing point blank to cover sex education in Scotland. So John Nicolson there as well. He also says, we don't want a culture war. My response to that is always, well, yes, we do. Because the alternative to a culture war is a culture rout or culture surrender. And that's what we've been having too much of recently. So a bit of war, a bit of fight back, a bit of battling over these issues is exactly what we need. He's trying to make out they're American issues. And we're saying Kate Forbes, Free Church of Scotland. I mean, the roots of the Free Church of Scotland go back a long way before America even existed as a nation. So looking at this, Kate Forbes and John Nicolson spot the sex-obsessed bigot. Well, John Nicolson certainly hates traditional sexual ethics. He wants his values teaching in schools. Now, what are his values? It's always the case with these people. They don't actually come out straightforwardly and say, I think people should be allowed to do this, 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 and this, and really be explicit and clear about what they're recommending at what ages. So we're not quite sure what his values are, but we certainly know that he hates traditional sexual ethical values. So he wants his values teaching in school, and fortunately for him, they are, unfortunately for parents. John Nicholson's views are typical of the SNP. I would say probably a majority of their elected representatives would have a similar viewpoint. And he thinks there's no need for civility whatsoever towards people who disagree with him. Now, I mentioned earlier on this protest in Denny. Do come along, 10 a.m. at the library in Denny, Wednesday the 29th of March. Do come along. There'll be a few speeches with lots of parents there expressing their displeasure. So it'd be great to see you as well. Denny, 10 a.m. Wednesday 29th of March. Right, thanks for watching.